Welcome back to Reddit Tales by Uncle Sammy. I see you, I appreciate you, and I'm thankful you subscribed and keep showing up. This space is built on your insights. Leave your thoughts and lessons below. Now, cue the tension, cue the truth, let's get into it. There's a certain kind of disrespect that tries to arrive dressed like honesty. If somebody looks you straight in the face and asks you to hold their place while they go figure themselves out with a person they used to love, do not get distracted by how calm they sound. Listen to what they are actually asking. They are asking you to make room for your own humiliation and call it maturity. That is the decision point in this story. Before we get into this one, tell me honestly in the comments. If your partner said they were leaving for 2 weeks of self-discovery with an ex, would you stay calm or walk away on the spot? And if you enjoy relationship drama stories with real consequences, make sure to like, share, and subscribe so you do not miss the next one. When Camille told me she was leaving with her ex for 2 weeks of self-discovery, she did not whisper or cry or even look ashamed. She stood by our kitchen counter in gray socks, one hand around a mug of mint tea, and held my eyes like she was telling me we needed more paper towels. Outside, late March rain tapped the windows of our duplex in northwest Detroit, and a city bus exhaled at the corner. I had been trimming the wick on one of her candles because it was smoking. She said, "I need you to hear me all the way through," and that sentence alone made my stomach tighten. I was 34 then, old enough to know trouble rarely announces itself loudly. Sometimes it comes with a softened voice and careful vocabulary. Camille had that voice when she was trying to make something ugly sound thoughtful. She worked in fundraising for a museum downtown and had a habit of organizing her lies the same way she organized gala seating charts, neat and color-coded and designed so nobody would feel insulted until it was too late. She tucked a loose curl behind one ear and said Andre had invited her to Taos. Not as a couple, she added quickly, as two people doing emotional inventory. I remember staring at the chipped blue bowl on the counter because I did not want the first thing I saw in myself to be rage. My father used to make every disagreement sound like furniture was about to break, and I had built my adult life around not becoming that man. I could have raised my voice, cussed, slammed the cabinet, done something dramatic enough to make her feel the force of what she had said. I did not, because loud men had scared me as a boy, and because somewhere in me I still believed calmness could keep dignity from spilling onto the floor. Camille and I had been together a little over 3 years. She moved into my place after her landlord sold the building where she rented a 1-bedroom near the river. At first, it felt easy. She made our rooms look like somebody thoughtful lived there. She filled mason jars with eucalyptus stems and tucked old motel key tags into shadow boxes she bought at estate sales. I fixed things for a living at a historic middle school on the west side, boilers and locks and stubborn windows mostly, and on Saturdays I sharpened barber clippers and salon shears at a shop on Livernois for extra cash. We were different in ways that seemed balanced then. My habits were plain. I liked clean counters, strong coffee, and old radios with real knobs. In the basement, I kept a folding table, a soldering iron, and 3 half-working tabletop radios I had rescued from thrift stores and garage sales. Camille used to come downstairs and laugh at the static and dust. She said I liked machines because they could be repaired without arguing back. I told her she liked old motel keys because she romanticized leaving places before anything had the chance to rot. We would kiss after lines like that. Back then, our honesty still felt playful instead of predictive. Andre had not been a problem at the beginning. He was a name from college, one of those people who existed in old stories the way weather exists in memory. They dated in their 20s in Chicago, broke up, drifted apart, and became one of those former couples who liked to call themselves important to each other. I should have paid attention to the way Camille said that. Important without responsibility. History without obligation. He resurfaced the previous fall after her aunt died in Cleveland. He sent flowers. He checked in. Then he kept checking in long after the casserole dishes had been returned and the sympathy cards were stacked away. At first, I wanted to be the kind of man who was not threatened by another person's past. She told me Andre was different now, that he facilitated men's groups and had gotten into meditation and desert retreats and intentional living, phrases that made my molars ache. I still tried. I said good for him. I nodded when she mentioned their occasional phone calls. I even laughed when she told me he once mailed her a postcard from Albuquerque with nothing on it but a hand-drawn sun. The laugh was real, but so was a little private discomfort I tucked away and called insecurity, because that felt easier than calling it instinct. The months before that kitchen conversation had a shape to them I only understood afterward. Andre started appearing in our apartment through Camille's language. Andre says people can outgrow love before they admit it. Andre asked whether I ever feel truly seen. Andre thinks most couples settle into roles and call it peace. Every time she said his name, she watched me after, like she was dropping pebbles in water to study the rings. I would shrug or change the subject, partly because I hated giving off jealousy and partly because I did not yet understand she was not testing my confidence. She was testing my flexibility. In January, we had dinner with her friend Patrice and Patrice's husband at a little soul food place with foggy windows and gospel humming low through a speaker near the register. Patrice asked whether Camille was still thinking about that artist retreat thing, and Camille kicked her under the table so hard her fork clinked. Patrice covered it with a cough, but I noticed. Later in the car, I asked what retreat was. Camille said it was nothing, just a possible volunteer opportunity in New Mexico this spring. The answer satisfied me for one full night. By morning, I was already sanding the corners off in my mind, so it would not cut me. There were other small things. She started guarding her phone without becoming obvious about it. She would set it face down, not because she had before, but because now she was remembering too. She began taking longer evening walks, even when the air still had winter teeth in it. She bought hiking socks, though she hated camping. One Sunday after church at my Aunt Renee's place, while everybody was arguing over dominoes and waiting on catfish, Camille sat at the end of the table smiling at a text with that private softness people get when they are not exactly where they are standing. I saw it and told myself grief changed people. That was my favorite lie. So when she stood in my kitchen and said Taos, said 2 weeks, said self-discovery, part of me felt shocked and another part felt tired, like the facts had finally arrived after their luggage. I asked one question first. Why does self-discovery require your ex? She did not look angry at that. She looked annoyed, like I had interrupted the presentation. Because he knows versions of me you don't, she said. He knew me before I became so careful. I need to figure out what belongs to me and what belongs to survival. The unfairness of that sat between us, polished and deliberate. Then figure that out here. I said, take a solo trip, take your sister, take your journal, and all your expensive teas. Why him? Camille exhaled through her nose and set her mug down with more force than necessary. Because he's not in my everyday life. Because there's enough distance for me to hear myself. She said it like a therapist had stamped it. Maybe one had. Maybe she practiced it in the mirror. The rain got harder, and somewhere downstairs the radiator knocked 3 times. I noticed a packed weekender near the hall bench, tucked behind my work boots. She had already decided before the conversation began. That was the moment something in me stopped trying to negotiate with language. A packed bag is a form of truth. She had planned the trip, bought what she needed, and built the emotional explanation after the logistics. All she wanted from me was consent dressed up as understanding. I felt humiliation before I felt anger. Humiliation has a colder temperature. It makes your fingertips light and your jaw heavy. I leaned back against the counter and said, if you go on a 2-week trip with your ex, you are not leaving from a relationship. You are leaving it. She blinked at me like I had become unreasonable in the span of one sentence. Camille hated when consequences arrived faster than she had staged for them. That is extreme, she said. You're making this dirtier than it is. I almost laughed at that, but it would have come out bitter. No, I said, I'm describing it without your decorations. Her face changed then, not into guilt, but into injury, because people like her often feel most wounded when they cannot manage the narrative. She started listing boundaries. Separate rooms. No romance. Honest conversations. A chance to heal old patterns. Each phrase made it worse. Not because I believed the details, but because any woman who respected me would have heard herself long before that list became necessary. That night, I slept on the couch without intending to. The lamp on the end table stayed on till nearly 3, because I kept pretending I was reading estimates for a boiler replacement at work. My chest felt full of gravel. Around midnight, Camille came downstairs with a blanket and draped it over the back of the couch like I was a patient relative at a hospital. "Please do not make this into something it isn't," she whispered. I could have argued until sunrise. I did not, because I already knew arguing was a trap. She needed me participating. Silence was the first thing I gave myself instead. In the morning, she asked if I could still drive her to the airport because parking at the terminal was expensive, and she did not want to deal with ride-share surge pricing. The nerve of that request almost woke laughter in me again. Not happy laughter. The kind that comes when absurdity finally steps into good light. I told her no. I said it calmly. She looked genuinely offended. "So that's where we are?" she asked. I said, "That's where you decided we were when you booked a flight with your ex." She took a ride anyway. From the front window, I watched her pull her suitcase through rainwater and never once looked back. After she left, the apartment felt staged, like a model unit showing what a life might look like if nobody had lived there hard enough to damage it. Her slippers were tucked under the chair. A half-finished legal pad list sat on the dining table with headings in green ink. Groceries, donor outreach, dry cleaning, candles. The ordinary debris of us remained, which made a betrayal feel less cinematic and more insulting. I went downstairs to the basement workshop and turned on one of my old radios. Static filled the room, then a distant preacher, then static again. I sat there on a metal stool and finally admitted something simple. I had been trying to be chosen by someone who still needed an audience. Saturday, I took my sharpening kit to Royal Crown Barbers like I always did. The shop was loud with clippers, sports debate, and the smell of aftershave and talc. Men came in for shape-ups. Kids squirmed in booster seats, and I stood near the back counter working oil into blades and testing tension with my thumb. Cedric, who had rented the first chair there since before I could grow a beard, looked at me once and said, "You look like you slept in a parked car." I told him the shortened version. He listened without interrupting, just kept brushing hair off a customer's cape. Then he said, "Son, confusion is never so organized." That sentence stayed with me because it named what I had missed. Camille was not lost. She was prepared. The difference matters. A lost person stumbles. A prepared person requests your patience while they act on a decision they already made. I went home that afternoon and pulled out our lease utility statements and a little notebook where I kept monthly expenses. The duplex was in my name. She transferred me rent and groceries. Our lives were entangled, but not beyond repair. For 2 hours, I made columns and numbers while rain dried on the porch rail outside. It was not revenge. It was the first practical thing I had done since the sentenced house entered my kitchen. I did not call Andre. That was another fork in the road, and I stood there longer than I liked to admit. I had his number because Camille once texted it to me before her aunt's funeral in case he needed directions to the repast. I could have sent a message sharp enough to slice my own dignity open. I could have asked man-to-man questions, as if my relationship required referee testimony. I chose not to because whatever truth existed belonged with the woman who had shared a bed and bills with me, not the man enjoying the benefits of her confusion. Some doors only humiliate you further when you knock. Camille texted the second evening. "Made it in. The sky here looks unreal." I stared at those words so long my phone dimmed. I typed 3 different responses and erased all of them. The final message I sent was 12 words. "Please arrange somewhere else to stay when you come back." She did not answer for an hour. Then, "Are you serious?" I did not respond. 15 minutes later, she sent a longer paragraph about my rigidity, my fear, my inability to hold space for complexity. I put the phone face down on the coffee table and let the room be quiet. Some accusations are just people protesting your boundary in real time. The following Sunday at Aunt Renee's, everybody was wearing spring colors because she said the season needed help arriving. Her bungalow always smelled like fried fish, lemon cleaner, and whatever pie my cousin Monique had decided she was perfecting that month. I lasted through prayer and half a plate before Monique cornered me near the sink and asked why Camille had missed 2 family dinners in a row. I lied first. Work trip. Then I saw my own reflection in the window over the sink, shoulders tight, mouth in, and I changed course. I told Monique the truth. Not every detail, just enough. Shame tastes different when spoken aloud. Monique did not gasp or start performing outrage on my behalf. She rinsed a serving spoon and said, "You don't owe anybody a jury trial for leaving a bad arrangement." That helped more than sympathy would have. For days I had been building arguments in my head, little closing statements I could offer friends or family, so they would understand I was not overreacting. Hearing her say I did not need to convince a panel loosened something in my chest. We stood there while the kitchen filled with laughter from the card table and my aunt fussed over the cobbler crust. Ordinary life kept happening, which felt almost disrespectful and deeply comforting at once. I thought a lot that week about how Camille and I began. We met at a summer fundraiser on Belle Isle, where I had been volunteered by my boss to help set up folding tables and extension cords. She came in late carrying a box of printed programs and apologized to everybody like the evening had personally inconvenienced her. She had on a yellow dress and looked like the type of woman who never had to repeat herself to get a room's attention. Later she found me by the service entrance taking a break and asked why I looked happier fixing a busted fan than listening to live jazz. I told her the fan made sense. She liked that answer. She said most men were too busy trying to impress her to just speak plainly. I liked that she was quick and observant and could make old things sound poetic without turning them into cliches. For a long time, Camille seemed fascinated by my steadiness. She said I made life feel less slippery. What I understand now is that some people love your steadiness until it becomes a mirror that reflects their own restlessness. Then the same thing that made you feel safe starts making them feel seen in ways they do not want. By January, my calm had become one of the reasons she said she could not hear herself. Midweek, Patrice called me from her car on lunch break. I could hear a turn signal clicking in the background. She said she had debated whether to tell me something, which usually means a decision was already made. A friend of hers from Santa Fe had seen Camille and Andre at an outdoor market near the plaza the day before. They looked close, Patrice said carefully. Not casual close. I asked what that meant. She hesitated, then said, hand on the lower back, sharing one coffee, the kind of close people recognize. I thanked her for calling and sat on the edge of my bed afterward, feeling less shocked and embarrassed that confirmation still hurt. That night, I opened our shared travel credit card account. We mostly used it for gas and bigger household purchases, then paid it off every month. 3 charges from New Mexico were pending: 1 restaurant, 1 boutique hotel cafe, 1 spa. Nothing illegal, nothing dramatic, just enough to reveal the fiction of separate boundaries. I took screenshots, saved them to a folder, and then closed the laptop. I could have sent Camille every receipt with a caption sharp enough to make her cry in public. I did not, because I had started noticing how revenge imagines relief but usually delivers more contact. What I wanted was distance, not a front row seat to her excuses. During the second week of her trip, I began packing carefully, not in a dramatic, movie scene way, more like a man sorting weather from weather. I bought 3 plastic storage bins in a hardware store and folded her off-season clothes into them. I wrapped the shadow boxes of motel key tags in old newspapers and wrote Camille on masking tape in block letters. I cleared 1 shelf in the bathroom and 1 side of the closet, then realized I was breathing deeper than I had in days. There is grief in touching the evidence of a life you built together. There is also information. Every object keeps asking what it belongs to now. I spoke to my landlord, Mrs. Trotter, the following Friday. She lived downstairs and had opinions on everybody's trash day habits, but she was fair. I told her Camille and I were separating and asked whether, when our lease ended in 6 weeks, I could move into the smaller unit she had upstairs in the carriage house behind the duplex. Less rent, fewer rooms. I said, I don't need all this space. She looked at me over bifocals and said, you are trying to shrink the mess before it spreads. I said yes. She nodded once. Smart. Sometimes the kindest thing anybody can do is not ask for the story. Camille returned on a Sunday night with desert dust on her boots and a soft brown sweater I had never seen before. The apartment smelled like lemon oil because I had spent the afternoon cleaning. Not for her, but for myself. She set her suitcase by the door and looked around too quickly. The bins were stacked neatly against the dining room wall. Her things were not gone, but they were no longer living. "You packed me?" she asked. "I organized what is yours," I said. She stared like the act itself offended her more than the reason. "You are really doing this." I answered, "You really did that." She tried tears next, but Camille's crying had always arrived with too much awareness of itself. Not fake exactly, just supervised. "Nothing happened like you think," she said. "The first few days, we mostly talked." That was the wrong sentence. It told me the timeline mattered to her because she knew a line had been crossed. I sat in the chair by the window and let the silence sit until she got uncomfortable inside it. "You do understand," I said finally, "that saying nothing happened at first is not the defense you think it is." She crossed her arms and looked toward the kitchen, as if the room might take her side. "You're collapsing a complicated situation into one ugly interpretation because it's easier for you," she said. I was tired enough to tell the truth cleanly. "No," I said, "I'm refusing to be the spare man in my own relationship." Her face tightened. "That's unfair." I shook my head. "Unfair is asking me to bless a trip with your ex and then calling me rigid because I know what it means." For a second she looked small and young and almost honest. I thought maybe we could reset when I came back. That sentence hurt more than the trip itself. Reset, like my dignity was a browser tab. Because our lease still had weeks left, we became two careful strangers sharing air. Camille moved into the second bedroom, which had once been my radio room, before I took the basement over for repairs. We made schedules for the bathroom without writing them down. She stopped making tea in the evenings because the kettle whistle carried too much history. I started leaving for work 20 minutes early just to avoid seeing her in the kitchen with her hair wrapped up and her eyes puffy from whatever private disappointment she was finally allowing herself. Separation is rarely one clean break. Sometimes there's a long hallway where both people keep pretending they're not breathing. Detroit in April cannot decide what it wants from people. One morning the sun would lay gold across the porch rail, and by evening sleet would slap the windshield hard enough to make you squint. I kept moving through routines because routine has saved me more than feelings ever did. I went to work, checked classrooms, replaced a busted lock on the art room supply closet, tightened pipes in the girls' bathroom, ate lunch in the boiler room with my sandwich and orange soda. On Saturdays, I still sharpened clippers at Royal Crown. Men in the shop knew something was wrong, because grief changes your posture before your mouth catches up. Cedric asked one afternoon whether I wanted him to tell a joke or tell the truth. I told the truth. He was oiling a trimmer while he talked. "A lot of people do damage because they want options more than they want intimacy," he said. "Options feel safer. Intimacy keeps score." I stood there running a test strip through clipper teeth and let that settle. He did not make Camille into a villain. He made her sound ordinary in a way that almost hurt worse. I had wanted betrayal to be some wild exception. Realizing it could come from ordinary selfishness felt smaller and meaner and much more difficult to romanticize. 3 weeks after she got back, I woke around 1 a.m. to the sound of Camille crying in the guest room. Not polished crying. Actual broken crying, the kind people make when nobody is watching. I stood in the hallway in the dark with my hand against the wall. I could have knocked. I could have sat on the edge of that bed and let old habits take over, because caring for her had once been the most natural thing I did. I chose not to, not because I had stopped loving her entirely, but because comfort for me would have become another way for her to avoid fully feeling the cost of what she chose. The next evening, she admitted Andre had not exactly returned home transformed and ready to claim her. We were both in the kitchen, careful not to touch while she rinsed spinach, and I portioned leftovers into containers for lunch. He said the trip brought clarity, she said, voice dry, and his clarity was that he still values freedom. She laughed once, but there was no humor in it. I set the lid on my container and did not rescue her from the sentence. After a minute, she added, "I think I wanted him to make me feel singular again." Hearing that was ugly, but at least it was honest in a way healing language had never been. That honesty opened something painful in me, too. For weeks I had been secretly measuring myself against a man I barely knew. Was he more adventurous? More emotionally fluent? More exciting than a guy who repaired locks and sharpened clippers and liked his coffee black? Camille's admission did not erase that insecurity, but it redirected it. She had not left because I lacked value. She had left because being chosen by a steady man did not quiet the emptiness she carried around from room to room. That realization did not feel triumphant. It felt sad. There is no joy in discovering somebody could wound you deeply while still being fundamentally lost themselves. By May, I had the keys to the carriage house unit behind Mrs. Trotter's place. It was above a detached garage and smaller than the duplex by nearly half, but it had good light in the mornings and just enough room for a narrow couch, my workbench, and the old oak dresser my mother left me. Monique and two guys from Royal Crown helped me move on a Saturday before noon. We carried boxes through a yard full of dandelions, while a neighbor played Old Anita Baker through an open window. Camille watched from the porch for part of it, arms folded tight, then went inside when my cousin started labeling kitchen boxes louder than necessary, right before the last trip. Camille stopped me by the back gate holding a photo album I had forgotten in the hall closet. It was one she made on our second anniversary, full of little ticket stubs and captions written in that slanted handwriting of hers. Belle Isle, Cedar Point, a church picnic where Aunt Renee made everybody wear matching white. I know this doesn't fix anything, she said. I just need you to know I did love you. This wasn't all fake. I believed her, which almost made it harder. Bad choices do not erase real affection. They just proved affection was not enough to govern her when appetite showed up. I took the photo album, but left the rest. I know some of it was real, I told her. That's why this hurt like it did. She looked at me then with a nakedness I had wanted months earlier and could not use anymore. I really thought you would still be here when I came back, she said. There it was, not just a betrayal, but the assumption underneath it. She had counted on my devotion as infrastructure, a road she could drive away on and still find waiting. I nodded once because I had no interest in turning that moment into theater. Then I carried my toolbox up the carriage house stairs and did not look back. Living alone again felt awkward before it felt peaceful. The first week I kept buying too much fruit and leaving cabinet doors open. I reached for my phone after funny things happened at work. Then remembered there was no one to send them to. Untangling practical life took longer than moving boxes. We canceled the card, split the streaming accounts, changed the internet plan, forwarded a stack of mail that still came with her museum logo return labels. She asked twice whether I wanted to process together. I declined both times. Processing is valuable when two people are seeking truth. It becomes another performance when one person is mostly seeking absolution. Summer came in heavy and bright. Heat sat on the sidewalks. Kids rode bikes too fast through alleys. The corner store near my new place started stocking peach Faygo in a bucket of ice by the register, and I found myself stopping there after work just to stand in air conditioning and listen to the owner argue about baseball with whoever wandered in. People think healing announces itself. Mine did not. It looked like sleeping through the night, 3 times in a row. It looked like realizing I had not checked Camille's social media in 9 days. It looked like hearing her name from Patrice on the phone and not feeling my stomach fall through me. We did meet once that August, but only because I decided I wanted conversation on my terms. Not because she had earned it. She asked if we could talk at a Coney diner halfway between my place and the museum. I chose a booth near the window and got there 10 minutes early, so I would not walk in searching for her face. Camille looked thinner, less arranged. She ordered coffee and did not touch it. I've been in therapy consistently, she said. Not retreat therapy, real therapy. I almost smiled at the distinction. I learned I chase old mirrors when I'm ashamed of the current version of myself. I appreciated the sentence, but I did not rush to reward it. That may be true, I said, and it still does not change what you asked me to carry. She nodded and stared at the spoon by her saucer. The diner had one of those old spinning pie cases by the register, and every time it turned, A little motor clicked. "I made you defend pain that should have been obvious," she said after a while. That was the closest she had come to naming the deepest wound. Not just that she went, but that she required me to litigate why it was degrading. I thanked her for saying it and left before nostalgia could soften the edges. I did not start dating right away. That part of the story always gets told too fast. Like a decent woman appears to prove the bad one was a lesson. Life is less tidy. I spent the fall relearning my own rhythms. I rebuilt a 1960s tabletop radio that had been collecting dust in my basement for over a year. I took Aunt Renee to her doctor appointments when Monique worked late. I started walking after dinner instead of sitting with television noise on at Royal Crown. Cedric eventually stopped studying my face every Saturday, which is how I knew I looked less newly wrecked. Grief does not vanish. It just stops introducing itself first. Around November, I got closer to Aisha, a transportation planner I had met through a neighborhood cleanup day organized by the school. She was funny in a dry, exact way and wore bright scarves, even when everybody else had surrendered to brown coats and gray skies. We started with coffee after planning meetings, then Saturday errands, then long talks in the parking lot after community board sessions. The first time I told her what happened with Camille, I was embarrassed by how plain it sounded. Aisha listened and said that would have injured anybody with self-respect. I had not realized how much I still needed the injury named without embellishment. Being around Aisha showed me something uncomfortable too. I had spent years mistaking tolerance for strength. I thought being patient, understanding, unthreatened, and endlessly available made me evolve. Sometimes it just made me easy to lean on while someone else avoided their own decisions. With Aisha, I practiced saying things sooner. I told her when I needed a quiet evening, instead of agreeing out of guilt. I told her I did not like last-minute cancellations because my time mattered. Small boundaries, ordinary ones. But every time I honored one, I felt less like the man standing in that kitchen hearing Taos and trying to politely debate his own humiliation. I heard through Patrice the following spring that Camille had left the museum and taken a job in Columbus. No scandal, no dramatic collapse, just a different city and a quieter version of herself. Maybe I wished her nothing harmful. I also did not dress that up as friendship. Some people can become gentle memories. Others remain important chapters you do not reread because a lesson is already underlined. One afternoon, while unpacking a box I had ignored since the move, I found one of Camille's old motel key tags wrapped in newspaper. Amarillo, Texas. Room 12. I held it for a minute, then dropped it into the trash and kept unpacking. What stays with me most is not the trip itself. It is the look on her face when I told her that if she went, the relationship would end. She truly believed there was a version of love where I would wait politely while she tested old feelings in desert light. Maybe she had met men who called that depth. I call it vacancy. These days, when I sit in my carriage house apartment, listening to one of my restored radios hum warm and clear, I think about how close I came to negotiating against myself just to avoid being left. I am grateful I did not. Losing her hurt. Losing my own self-respect would have lasted longer. The quiet moments mattered most here. The packed weekend of behind the boots, the ride to the airport she still expected, the crying to the guest room wall, the line at the diner where she admitted she made him defend obvious pain. Those are the places boundaries become real, not in speeches, in choices. A person can love you and still treat your steadiness like storage space for their confusion. Knowing the difference will save you a long, expensive kind of grief. If this story got under your skin, that is probably because the red flags were subtle until they were not. For more emotional cheating stories, breakup drama, betrayal confessions, and relationship stories where self-respect matters, like this video, share it, and subscribe for more stories like this. The end.